When time retreats, it does so quietly, without apologies or explanations. People, names, dates dissolve as if they had never existed, and suddenly I hear clearly not what happened, but what was felt. Perhaps this is exactly what remains when everything else leaves. I am speaking to you from the living room of my own home, a place that long ago ceased to be a symbol of prosperity or stability. It is more like a pause between thoughts. Life has gathered here, but not in the form of things, in the form of silence that does not press but holds. Outside the windows, the world is changing, other voices, other themes, other speeds. I do not judge them, and I do not try to catch up. I simply listen to how my time gradually lets me go. There is no dramatization in this present moment. There is clarity. It does not come at once, but with years, when you stop measuring days by results. There is no need here to prove anything, neither to yourself nor to anyone else, only to be present in your own words, in your own breathing of thoughts. I feel how the past does not pull me back, but sits down beside me like an old acquaintance to whom there is nothing left to explain. This moment is neither an end nor a beginning. It is a place of observation. I look at life not from a height, but from a depth. And in this depth, it is unexpectedly calm, as if everything that was meant to happen has already happened, and all that remains is attentiveness to what sounds between words. I am 79, and this number no longer frightens me. It simply records a distance. I no longer think of life as a line where something must be achieved in time. It resembles a long conversation in which many pauses turned out to be more important than the lines themselves. I remember myself as a boy in post-war Europe, where adults spoke in half-whispers and the future seemed something fragile. Then there was youth, already in another country, with the belief that the world could be rebuilt if one insisted enough. America knew how to nourish this illusion with work, movement, the promise of growth. I worked as it was customary then, for a long time and seriously, postponing life for later. There were years when I confused fullness with busyness and meaning with recognition. It seemed that the path had to be straight, and that if you stayed the course, something resembling a reward would be waiting at the end. But the years pass, and it becomes clear. The path was not straight, but alive, with breaks, pauses, accidental turns that later proved to be decisive. Age gives a strange freedom, not to justify the past and not to embellish it. I look at what I have lived without heroization. There were enough mistakes there, but also enough honest attempts. And now, I know. What mattered was not where I arrived, but who I was becoming along the way. It is precisely this feeling that holds me today. With age, losses cease to be events. They become a background. At first, people leave, not suddenly, but as if gradually moving away, even while still nearby. Then roles, titles, former notions of one's own irreplaceability disappear. For a long time, I believed that something could be held onto, relationships, status, even the feeling of home. But time is patient. It does not take things away abruptly. It simply stops supporting the illusion that they belong to you. I lost loved ones, not all at once, but each loss opened a void within me that could not be filled with memories. Love that once seemed permanent became part of an inner landscape, not a presence, but a warmth that sometimes returns without warning. The children grew up and went on to live their own lives, and that is right. The greatest mistake parents make is thinking they can remain the center. Things leave too, but more quietly. Houses change owners, cities change faces, countries change moods. What seemed stable in the middle of the century now looks like a naive bet on permanence. I have seen history cross out plans and how people who clung to what was theirs were left with nothing but resentment. Ownership is a bargain with time in which it always has the final word. And yet losses do not only take away, they remove the excess. When you hold nothing tightly, your hands become free. I began to notice that the pain of loss over time turns into clarity. There was nothing that could be held forever. There was only the possibility of being near while it lasted. And perhaps that was always enough. Once I believed that major events shape life. Wars, economic upswings, career rises, social shifts. It seemed that they were what gave meaning to our presence in time. I lived in a country that knew how to call this success. The right education, stable work, gradual growth, the feeling that you were on the bright side of history. We spoke about the future with the confidence of people who did not doubt that it owed them something. But now, looking back, I see major events leave little personal trace. They pass through us like a strong wind, changing the landscape but not answering the main questions. I witnessed moments that were later called historical, but memory does not hold on to them. It returns to the quiet joy of an accidental conversation, to someone's support at a moment of doubt, to a glance that promised nothing but gave much. Success turned out to be a temporary translation of other people's expectations. It demanded constant confirmation and did not tolerate pauses. I spent years proving something that later lost its meaning. And this is not bitterness, rather a calm astonishment. Major events remain in textbooks, but life happens outside of them. There, where no one applauds and no one records results. It was these unnoticed moments, as it turned out, that were the most precise. Loneliness does not come when there is no one nearby, but when the need to explain yourself disappears. At first, this is frightening. In silence, there are no witnesses, no roles behind which you can hide. For a long time, I resisted this emptiness, trying to fill it with memories or thoughts of how things could have been different. But loneliness is not about absence. It is about encounter. Over the years, the inner dialogue becomes more honest. You no longer argue with the past or bargain with the future. You simply listen. I listen to myself without justifications and without accusations. There is fatigue there, but no despair. There is regret, but without self-destruction. Loneliness turned out to be a space where you can allow yourself to be imperfect and not fix it. In this silence, I understood that strength does not always look like action. Sometimes it is the ability to remain with your own thoughts without running from them. I no longer seek confirmation of my rightness. Inner agreement is enough for me. Loneliness taught me not to confuse closeness with presence and significance with visibility. And perhaps most importantly, in loneliness, the fear of being forgotten disappears. When you truly meet yourself, it becomes clear the deepest connections do not need witnesses. They continue in memory, in gratitude, in the quiet acceptance of who you have become. And this inner space is enough to not feel emptiness. There are things that come too late, and precisely for that reason, truly, for a long time, I believed that it was important to be right in discussions and choices and life decisions. Being right seemed like a form of protection, a way not to get lost in a complex world. But over the years, I saw how much warmth it takes away, how many conversations it cuts short, how many people it distances, even when the intention was good. Gradually, I understood. Kindness is no weaker than being right. It is deeper. It does not need proof and does not demand victory. It simply stays nearby. I recall moments when I could have responded sharply and did not, when I could have insisted and stayed silent. At the time, it seemed like a compromise, almost a defeat. Now I see. It was precisely in these moments that the human was preserved. Moral awakening does not resemble a discovery. It is rather like a slow clearing, when the light does not blind, but allows you to see small things. Attention to another's fatigue, patience for a different pace of life, the ability to listen without preparing a response. I no longer think that I have something to prove to the world. If there is any meaning in what has been lived, it is in those instances when I was gentler than the situation demanded. And it is a strange feeling to know that kindness outlives arguments. It is not stored in memory as an event, but remains as a state. Perhaps this is what people carry forward even without knowing from where. And if something is truly worth being passed between generations, it is not rules and not conclusions, but a way of being with others, carefully, attentively, without the need to be right. The change of generations no longer seems to me a loss of position. It is a natural movement in which there is no resentment. The world moves on not because I have become unnecessary, but because that is how life is arranged. Once I was the one who entered and filled the space with my own voice. Now I am the one who steps slightly aside and makes room. There is no humiliation in this. There is completion. I look at those younger without the desire to teach. They do not need my answers. They have their own questions, and that is right. My place now is neither ahead nor behind, but somewhere alongside the time I have lived. I no longer strive to be relevant. It is enough for me to be honest with myself and calm about what has already been done. Acceptance comes when you let go of the idea of significance. I do not need to leave a trace. It is enough not to interfere with the light passing further. What I once passed on in words and attitude and example no longer belongs to me. It lives its own life, and in this there is a strange joy. I take my place not as a center, but as a part, as a person who was, loved, made mistakes, and learned not to hold on to life tightly. In this flow, I no longer resist. I simply move along with it, without fear, without claims, with a quiet consent to be who I have become. Now, as I approach the boundary, the word end does not sound harsh. It is more like evening light that does not demand attention, but softly changes everything around. I do not summarize life. I thank it for being imperfect, for not always meeting expectations. That is what made it real. Gratitude comes not as an emotion, but as a state. It is quiet, without exaltation. I am grateful to the people who appeared and disappeared, even to those who left pain. They taught me depth. I am grateful to time, not for what it gave, but for what it taught me to release. In the end, nothing needs to be held onto in order to have meaning. In this silence, there is no loneliness. There is presence. I feel a connection not to events or achievements, but to the very fact of life. Fragile, changeable, attentive to small things, to intonation, to pause, to a glance that promises nothing, but gives something. It was these moments, as it turned out, that were the main ones. And if I can say something to you, then not as advice, but as a request. Do not postpone life for later. Do not wait for a better moment, a clearer answer, the right time. Notice what is already nearby. Warmth, attention, simple kindness. Because when time, people, and events pass, what remains is not what we owned, but how we were. And that is more than enough.